President Trump is in his announcement called it the potential Manhattan Project of our time. It's a big undertaking. But I do think that if we bring the public along and even allow the public to participate in airing areas where they're encountering government waste or bureaucracy and surface that, we're able to make this something that isn't just top down, but also bottom up. And dare I say, unite the country. We want to do something different with DOGE, which is we've actually put a finite expiry date on it. I think it was Reagan who famously said there's no such thing as a government program that doesn't live. It's the best evidence we have for eternal life. And I don't think it has to be that way. With DOGE, we've set an expiry date of July 4th, 2026, which is a fitting date because that's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And we can think of no better gift to give our country on its 250th birthday than a federal government that is massively downsized to a scale and scope that it will make our founders proud.
As the one and only Vivek Ramaswamy giving us a taste of what to expect from DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. We now know what Trump's plans are to dismantle the administrative state, and they are very bold and they are very sweeping. Now, those plans are, of course, coming by way of none other than the twin heads of DOGE itself, Elon Musk and Vivek. They recently wrote and published an essay in the Wall Street Journal entitled "The DOGE Plan to Reform Government." It's a very revealing piece wherein they detail their plans on how to tackle the federal debt, which is currently standing at a completely unsustainable $35 trillion. They go over how they're going to cut billions in government expenditures and how they are going to fire tens of thousands of bureaucrats who make up permanent Washington. And both Elon and Vivek are keenly aware of just how nefarious these tens of thousands of bureaucrats really are and what a threat they are to the constitutional order of our republic. Here is what they write, quote, "Most legal edicts in America today are not laws enacted by Congress, but rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats, tens of thousands of them each and every year. Most government enforcement decisions and discretionary expenditures aren't made by the democratically elected president or even his political appointees, but by millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants within government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections." Now, the key to those civil service protections is the protection from retaliation. Okay, this is what you got to get. One of the reasons why, if not the reason why, it's so hard to fire or lay off a government worker is because the law shields them from political retaliation. So this is the key barrier that stands in the way of Trump mass firing the administrative state. Nevertheless, both Elon and Vivek are zeroing in on the heart of the problem, right? Roger Kimball of American Greatness actually just wrote an excellent piece about this. And he notes that while Article 1 of the Constitution vests all legislative power in Congress, just as Article 3 vests all judicial authority in the court, since at least 1940, an administrative state and the tens of thousands of unelected bureaucrats who work for that administrative state have risen up precisely to circumvent both the legislature and the courts. That's absolutely essential to get. In other words, real legislative power has been increasingly concentrated in what some are calling administrative bureaus rather than in Congress. So our laws today are not authored by and large. We're talking 99% of our laws are not authored by democratically elected congressmen. They're authored by these unelected bureaucrats who comprise permanent Washington, unelected bureaucrats who occupy administrative agencies and who author laws that serve to further empower those agencies. And the courts up until like literally months ago. We'll talk about that in a sec. And the courts have shielded them and protected them. It's so essential to understand that both Congress and the courts have, for whatever reason, yielded their power and authority to these unelected bureaucrats, at least since the 1940s. And the result has been the rise of what some are calling a state within a state, a sort of parallel legal and political structure populated by unelected bureaucrats. And these bureaucrats are increasingly binding citizens to laws, not through congressionally enacted statutes, but through the edicts of a managerial bureaucracy, the administrative state. And what, of course, that does is it interrupts our Democrat feedback loop, our democratic feedback loop. So if congressmen are passing laws we don't like, what do? Well, we could just vote in different congressmen. But if the laws that are binding, 99% of them don't go through the legislative process, then there's no way to hold these unelected bureaucrats accountable for the laws that we don't like. And that is exactly what Elon and Vivek are zeroing in on. And so what do Elon and Vivek propose to do to dismantle this colossus, this monster, this octopus, this Leviathan? First and foremost, they are going to identify and hire a lean team of small government crusaders, including some of the sharpest technical and legal minds in America. This team will work in the new administration closely with the White House Office of Management and Budget. The two of us will advise DOGE at every step to pursue three major kinds of reform: regulatory rescissions, administrative reductions, and cost savings. We will focus particularly on driving change through executive action. That's going to be key. If you're taking notes here, you want to write that down. We will focus particularly on driving change through executive action based on existing legislation rather than passing new laws. Now, there's something really exciting here, and Richard Kimball highlights this. There are two important Supreme Court decisions. Actually, both Elon and Vivek highlight these Supreme Court decisions in their op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. These are two very, very important ones. The first is West Virginia versus the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. This is a decision the Supreme Court rendered back in 2022. And this decision says that agencies may not impose regulations dealing with major economic or policy questions unless Congress specifically authorizes them to do so. So it's a decision that basically dismantles the administrative state at the legislative level. The administrative state is now accountable to Congress based on that decision. But of course, we've had no executive administration to enforce that accountability, with Biden being, what shall we say, cognitively AWOL. Okay. So that's the first thing. You have the West Virginia versus the EPA, which in effect returns power back to the legislature, to Congress. And then the second major Supreme Court decision is their recent overturning of the Chevron doctrine earlier this year. And that was absolutely huge. If you don't know what the Chevron decision was, this goes back to 1984. It's what's called the Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council case. The Supreme Court back in 84 ruled that courts had to give deference to federal agencies as the experts when it comes to creating regulations based on an ambiguous law. It's a mouthful, but basically what that means is Congress routinely enacts open-ended laws, right? Some vague or ambiguous environmental law. Maybe it might be just, this law, a Clean Air Act, and this law will require that the air be clean. So it's very ambiguous. And then what they do is they give huge latitude to regulative agencies to work out the details. And they can even continue to change and adjust the details as time goes on. Now, they can't do that anymore because of the West Virginia decision versus the EPA, which returned power back to the legislature. They can't exercise any powers that that Congress does not expressly give to them. But nevertheless, the Chevron decision is precisely why regulatory agencies have accumulated so much power. The Supreme Court, again, this going back to 84 in the Chevron decision, the Supreme Court originally gave these regulatory agencies literally unlimited power in that there was no legal recourse to challenge their regulations. The Chevron decision basically made regulatory agencies the, quote, experts in their respective fields, and all the courts in the country were required to just defer to the regulatory agency's interpretation of the ambiguous or vague law passed by Congress. So what this means is that for the past 40 years, federal agencies have been able to interpret laws to mean whatever they want them to mean. And the courts basically had to go along with it. That's why the legal practice was called the Chevron deference, and it put bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, in charge of the nation. It's how OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, remember this? This is how OSHA was able to mandate that everyone who worked for a company of 100 employees or more had to get vaccinated or else be fired. No law gave OSHA that authority. OSHA regulatory officials, unelected regulatory officials, just made it up. And courts had to sign with it. Well, those days are now over. They are now over as a result of the Supreme Court's overturning of the Chevron decision earlier this year. And so the West Virginia versus the EPA case took power away from the administrative state and gave it back to Congress, whereas what? The overturning of the Chevron decision returned power where? Back to the courts. Now the courts can push back all they want against regulatory agencies. And so we've really just been waiting for an administration, a responsible executive administration, to form something like DOGE to come in and clean up the mess that these two Supreme Court decisions in effect created. And that is exactly what Elon and Vivek are doing. And to me, this is the most brilliant part of their plan. What they're going to do is they are going to enact everything, all of their reforms, through the power of the presidency, through executive orders. But this is key, right? Because the very first thing you say is, oh, no, if you do it through executive orders, doesn't that now mean that, say Kamala gets in 2028? I doubt she'll even win a single primary. But regardless, she comes in 2028 and she could just reverse all these executive orders, right? Why would we want to do this? These executive orders that they have planned will roll back regulations that wrongly bypass Congress on the one hand and the courts on the other. After those regulations are fully rescinded by executive order, a future president will not be able to simply flip the switch and revive them, but would instead have to ask Congress's permission to do so, precisely because the Supreme Court's West Virginia decision returned that power to the legislature, and the executive order simply enacted and realized that return. And the courts are 100% behind that with the overturning of the Chevron decision. That's the heart of dismantling the administrative state as far as DOGE is concerned. A blitzkrieg of executive orders from Trump's desk will enact regulatory rescissions, administrative reductions, and cost savings, and no future president can simply flip the switch back and reverse them, since the powers that once belonged to these administrative and regulatory agencies will be returned to Congress, and it is Congress now who stands in the way of them being enacted with Supreme Court approval. It's absolutely brilliant stuff. And so this dismantling of the regulatory octopus will then in turn enable the real goals of DOGE, beginning with the mass firings throughout the administrative state, throughout the state, within the state, right? And this is what, again, Vivek and Elon write here. The number of federal employees to cut should be at least proportionate to the number of federal regulations that are nullified. Not only are fewer employees required to enforce fewer regulations, but the agency would produce fewer regulations once its scope of authority is properly limited. Won't that simply swell the ranks of the unemployed? Not if it's done right. Employees whose positions are eliminated deserve to be treated with respect, and DOGE's goal is to help support their transition into the private sector. Elon and Vivek are actually promising to help the tens of thousands of laid off bureaucrats find work in the private sector. Move them out. Make sure you move them out in Northern Virginia, whatever you do, so we can flip Virginia red finally. This is amazing stuff. So it's a detailed plan, but it basically boils down to two verticals. All right. They're going to the power of the presidency to issue a number of executive orders to dismantle the agencies and regulations that have surpassed Congress and the courts, reallocate those functions to the legislature so they can't be usurped again by executive order. And then once that vertical is complete, then you fire all personnel in accordance with the amount of regulatory administrative cuts that were dismantled by the executive orders. It's perfect. In other words, you can't expect to keep a job that no longer exists. And that most likely will get around all the legal challenges since there's no political retribution. Your job doesn't exist anymore. And again, to me, this is what's so essential. Most of the proposals that I've read on dismantling the administrative state actually start with the firings. I was just reading one today. Let's start first. The first thing Trump's got to do is got to fire 200,000 people. Well, that's not going to work. Even this person admitted that it would go through years of court challenges. It does not start with mass layoffs. What makes Elon's and Vivek's proposal so good, so sound, is they actually start with the executive orders dismantling the administrative state, removing the job positions in accordance with two major Supreme Court decisions. So they've got Supreme Court cover, as it were. And then what that does is they organically remove the employees who no longer have those jobs anymore. So this is Trump's plan to dismantle the administrative state. And it really looks like nothing is going to be able to stop it. What a gift for the 250th anniversary of our republic. We often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life, and one crucial aspect of that is your routine. Staying strong physically and mentally isn't just about living longer, it's about living better. I partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. More specifically, I've been using Beam Dream for a while now, and it's completely changed the way I sleep. I'm a horrible sleeper. I used to toss and turn while my mind raced through the night. But since taking Dream Gang, I fall asleep much faster and even sleep all throughout the night. It's a game changer. Beam Dream is made with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get the deep sleep you need and deserve. It's become a nightly ritual of mine. I look forward to it each and every day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I even wake up before my alarm sometimes, which is something I never used to do. I have the best deal I've ever had with Beam, so now's your time to give Dream a try. Shop early access to Beam's biggest sale ever, and get this, get up to 50% off site-wide for a limited time when you use promo code Turley. Yes, that's half off, gang. Don't miss out on this offer. Click the QR code on the screen or use the link below to propel your wellness journey to the next stage today. All right. So in the wake of President Trump's massive victory on November 5th, many scholars are recognizing that our world is going through a significant change right now. Now, originally, scholars like Matthew Goodwin focus on the rise of what we commonly refer to as nationalist populism, where populations were increasingly revolting against globalist institutions and structures and reasserting their national sovereignty, like we saw with the Brexit movement and the first rise of Trump back in 2016. But lately, more and more scholars are noticing that something much deeper is going on here. We're going way beyond a mere revolt, and it's going even beyond nationalism. The revolt is actually turning into a renewal, and nationalism is increasingly being eclipsed by rediscovery of civilizationalism. We even saw this ironically in the likes of none other than the avowed atheist Richard Dawkins. You guys remember this? He recently and ironically lamented the loss of Christian civilization in Great Britain. Civilizational populism is going beyond mere nationalism in its profound rediscovery of the distinctively religious foundations of human culture and society, which then raises a very important question. What would a renewed American civilization really look like? And what role does the revitalized church play in that renewal? Well, joining me today is someone who has written extensively on the Reformation renewal of civilization, and that's Pastor Doug Wilson. Now, if you're not familiar with Doug, I mean, for the past 4 decades, he's been on the forefront of civilizational renewal in Moscow, Idaho, including the founding of a number of churches and schools and New St. Andrews College, Canon Press, the Association of Classical Christian Schools that the new Defense Secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, has been working with. So we've had a number of our employees here at Turley Talks. A number of my former students have gone off and have studied at New St. Andrews and have even gotten married and settled in New St. Andrews. So we're seeing this beautiful, burgeoning, renewed Christian civilization happening there. So no one is more equipped to inform us on what this new civilizationalist populism is than Doug Wilson himself. So Doug, welcome. Great to see you again, as always.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, it's an honor. So I was really looking forward to talking with you on this because, you know, when you look at the landscape of America currently and just the whole, the MAGA movement, the conservative MAGA movement, what do you see, big picture, what do you see as some of the key strengths of the MAGA movement? And what do you see as some of the key weaknesses moving forward?
Okay, I would say the key strength is that the peasants with pitchforks finally decided to storm the castle on the hill.
I love it. Yeah.
All right. That's the key strength. The weakness has to do with what happens when you have a large group of energized people with no clear institutional structures or walls or guideposts to keep them where they ought to be. In other words, some people who are storming the castle on the hill might get distracted and want to go down some alleys or streets to the side to settle some old scores. And you just don't want the focus to be taken away from the elimination of our corrupt oligarchies all over the world. That's what we're dealing with, is corrupt oligarchies.
Right.
That is the great blessing of these different revolts. That's the great blessing. But there is a challenge in every period of tumult. And that challenge is the heart of man remains sinful, and we've got to watch ourselves as well as the other guy. And so I would urge people who are toying with this, investigating it, or caught up in it, to avoid scapegoating, avoid I don't know if I'm going to get the right guy, but I'm going to get somebody. That's the thing to watch out for.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting because, like you said, I mean, populism has so much promise to it. I don't know. Maybe we could say the Reformation was a kind of populist revolt against sort of against the feudalist world of the age. But it had to be. But the church was at the center of that revolt. Correct. And so to me, why I'm so fascinated by this kind of latest round of scholarship that's just come out, and it's very new, it's only about a year or 2 years old, is they're noticing that there does seem to be dynamics in play that are going back and seeking to revitalize the religious underpinnings of civilization. So this is going way beyond just like national sovereignty stuff. It's all part of it. That's very much a part of it. But this is, I mean, we're seeing it in India with sort of this Hindu revitalization that's happening. We're seeing it in Turkey with this sort of new Ottoman identity happening. Russia with Russian orthodoxy. Even China's going back and talking more about Confucius than they're talking about communism. And it seems here we have, I mean, even Richard Dawkins is, we talked about this the last time you were on here. I mean, he's lamenting the loss of Christian civilization. It seems like we're starting to see more and more people openly calling on turning back, the whole Christ is King movement and so forth, turning back and saying the foundation that we have here is Christianity. If MAGA is not ultimately a Christian renewal, it is it just could be another temporary ideology to take its place on the ash heap of history.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I would say basically what we're seeing in this revolt against the globalist elites is a statement that from all these different populations, that they don't, whether or not I believe that Islam, for example, offers a true transcendent. I don't. I believe the Christian faith is true and the Christian God is the true God. But everybody knows that the secular governance structure of the globalist elites, they know that that's not transcendent.
Right.
All right.
That's right. We know that's right.
Yeah. What's the one thing? What's the one thing that we can all agree on?
Exactly.
We can agree on the fact that the United Nations or the Geneva or Brussels folks, we can all agree that they are not living on Mount Olympus. They are not it. Okay. Now we would have our, Christians would, Christianity remains a missionary faith regardless. And so consequently, I would want to persuade the Hindu and persuade the Muslim and persuade the Buddhist and preach the gospel to them. But we can all agree that bureaucrats are not it.
Right. That's right. Yes, there's no gospel in bureaucracy. That's for sure.
That's right.
Now you're at the forefront of revitalizing the church and in playing this role of reawakening and redeeming every aspect of culture, including politics. And that's one of your controversial characteristics is you do not believe anything in Christ's cosmos has been set aside for not being touched by
Right.
the power of the redeeming, transfigurative power of the gospel. What
Yeah,
role does
Jesus rose from the dead. That means it all belongs to him.
it? That's right. That's right. All right. All powers, principality. He stands above everything. I love the Romans 8. He's above everything. Everything else in all of creation. Nothing can separate us from the love of God in the face of Christ. He is above it all. So, what role does the church play in addressing any of the weaknesses that the MAGA movement may have?
One of the things that the church has to recover and has gone into long decline over many years is we have to recover the ability to preach the word in a way that brings it down to application, practical application. And that means application in the workplace. That means application when you go to vote. And it means application in the relationship of husbands to wives and wives to husbands, and in the relationship of parents to children. What am I supposed to do as a Christian? What am I supposed to do as a Christian father? What am I supposed to do as a Christian mother? What am I supposed to do as a Christian blacksmith? What am I, what does the gospel have to do with these things? And because the church has not been equipping Christians to live like they were Christians Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday through the week, the world has become increasingly secular. So what Christians have been taught by default is, look, you come to this little God box on the weekend and you worship God in the box. And then when you go out into the dirty world and your only application is try to keep your own nose clean. And then if you keep your own nose clean and you keep coming back to the God box, then when you die or when Jesus comes again, we'll all be okay. And basically, it looks like a lot of evangelical Christians have picked up the idea that God got involved in a land war in Asia. And what's going to happen at the end of the world, he's going to helicopter us all out of Saigon and write the whole thing off. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to be transformative. We are here in order to make a difference. I would say that the biggest central difference that churches can make is teaching parents to keep their kids, which is the theme of my most recent book. Keep your kids. Christians should stop being the breeder farm for the secularists, right? Where we have the kids, and then we ship them off to the government schools to be manipulated into worker bees for the hive. That's not what we ought to be about.
Yeah. But it's so interesting you say that, because I get that a lot. I'll talk about the very promising future of conservative Christian culture, and that we're the ones having the kids, and they've basically stopped having them. Right? Eric Kaufman of the University of London has that wonderful book, Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth? And his answer is yes, basically they are. He calls it, I think, the soft underbelly of liberalism. That is, the freedom of being a sovereign individual entails the fact, the freedom of not having kids. And so conservative Christians are having more kids than ever. So where seculars have stopped. And yet the pushback I get is, but they don't need to have kids if they can steal ours. And if they can steal ours through the educational institutions, through Hollywood and the like. And that's what I love about what you do, is you address the holistic civilizational picture. And that's interesting, because I think that leads to the question of sort of like parallel institutions, as it were, very much similar to the classical Christian world that you helped found. What role do parallel institutions have in building civilization? Of course, Elon seems to be blurring that boundary now, because now he seems to be buying up all the institutions. But what role do you think Christians building our own parallel economy, parallel institutions have in living out that vision faithfully?
Yeah, I very much want to encourage Christians to get into the world of business, into the marketplace, into the world of education, and build schools and businesses and restaurants. And I very much want Christians to do that as Christians. But I want to make a distinction between alternative civilization and parallel civilization. In a parallel situation, you are in there together with the non-believers, and the walls and the walls between these institutions are porous. In other words, non-believers can come to your restaurant. Non-believers can look at what you're doing, and they can see what you're doing because you're doing it in close proximity to them. It used to be the case when things got too hot for believing Christians, they could just get on a boat and sail to America, right? There was some place to go, and so a bunch of evangelical Danes came over to America. A bunch of evangelical Dutchmen went to Michigan, and so that's one of the reasons why I think those parts of Europe have collapsed in terms of their Christian commitments, is because all the people who really meant it left. But there was somewhere to go, but we're not in that position anymore until Elon gets the thing on Mars going. There's there's no place to go, and so consequently, and pulling what the Amish have done is still too close and quaint and too much of a curiosity. I believe that we have to learn how to be robust Christians in the presence of people who don't believe or are hostile to what we're doing. But then they can see the impact of what we're doing. One time years ago, there was a fellow who was sitting down in an alternative. We have our own Christian coffee shop gathering place here, but so do the non-believers. And my Christian friend was in this coffee shop with a non-believer, and he overheard a citizen of the town checking out a new guy, telling him all the businesses to stay away from. All the Kirker businesses that you have to avoid. This one, you have to avoid this one, and there's quite a few up and down Main Street that you have to avoid. But the icing on the cake was when he got through the list, telling him all the businesses to avoid. He then said, and it's a shame too, because they're all the best ones.
Oh,
okay. So if you want really good food, if you want really good beer, if you want really good dental care, if you want really good, these people are on it. These people are doing what they do to the glory of God, and so consequently, they're not just trying to attract customers and move them through. They want to do what they do to the glory of God, and that means quality. It says in Proverbs, "Do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings." Right? The Bible teaches that cream rises, and one of the ways that we can make an impact is in proximity to non-believers. We can build parallel economies and parallel support networks, parallel medical practice, parallel insurance, parallel. We can do all the things, and non-believers are going to start noticing. And as the unbelieving culture disintegrates even further, they're going to notice even more.
Right.
Hey, what we're doing doesn't work, and what they're doing over there appears to be working.
Yes.
Now, I'm not a pragmatist, I'm a Christian, but this is the death blow to pragmatism. It doesn't work.
Right.
Okay. And so, but the Christian faith does,
Right.
because we don't worship results.
Exactly.
We worship Jesus.
Yes. I love it. Oh man, I got to write that down. The death blow of pragmatism is that it does not work. I love that. That was worth it right there. That was brilliant.
I'm glad.
Now, I mean, what you're doing in Moscow is just obviously it's amazing. I mean, you forced NBC News to come out and have to cover you guys, and which was brilliant. That was an excellent interview and segment they had of you guys there. I think they inadvertently showed just what an impact you were having in that community. It is stunning stuff. But the question, I guess, is it, the term might be franchisable. I mean, is it transportable? Is there a secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
Is it translatable in other contexts?
Thank you. I think that's a great question. And I've faced this over the years, and I would compare it to this. I would say, no, it's not franchisable because we're not Burger King. Okay. It's
Right.
not franchisable because what we're doing is not like a Coca-Cola bottling plant. If you go get a big a Whopper on the East Coast, it's going to taste exactly like a Whopper that you bought in Oregon. That's franchisable. At the same time, there are certain commonalities that can be exported and can be done elsewhere, but they have to be done a little bit differently. So, for example, you can have Merlot, a vineyard that in California where they make Merlot wine, and a vineyard in France where they grow and make Merlot wine, and a vineyard in many different places, and it's all going to be Merlot, but the terroir is going to be different and distinct in each place.
Right.
The grapes are the same kind of grape, but circumstances and surroundings and climate and all of those things will give it its own unique flavor. So consequently, a classical Christian school in the Deep South is going to be distinct from a classical Christian school here in the Pacific Northwest. And I would say it ought to be. It should be. And this is, frankly, if I can dare say something, this is the true multiculturalism.
Yes. Yes.
What the unbelievers are wanting to do is they want an artificial counterfeit multiculturalism.
Right.
And what we want is the real thing. If Jesus Christ is the Lord of all, he enables Brazilians to be truly Brazilian, Americans to be truly American, and inside America, Southerners to be truly Southern, Yankees to be truly Yankee, and this is the wonderful binding thing, in such a way as they can all get along.
Yes.
Right? When we fragment into tribes or subcultures and we don't keep Christ at the center, one of the things that happens is wars.
Yeah.
That's, wars, conflict, tension, so forth. But if we keep Christ at the center and we appreciate, here's another illustration. You've never seen a guy in the card aisle at Safeway getting into a fight with another guy because he saw the other guy tried to buy a card that said to the world's greatest mom. And he said, you don't have the world's greatest mom. I have the world's greatest mom. Well, no, if I love and appreciate my culture,
right,
as I do, then I can understand fully why someone else would love and appreciate their culture.
Right.
Right. And flip that around. You do not teach children to respect other cultures by teaching them to despise their own.
Right.
If you teach them to despise their own, what's going to happen is they're going to start despising others, and then you're going to have a recoil, and you're going to have sort of the angry young black-pilled men on the right, young men who have been disillusioned by everything, and they start reading Nietzsche, and everything is, everything's hovering above the void and the abyss. We don't want that. But but if you don't want that, then you can't do the liberal thing, which is to kick white kids in the head for being white and blame them for everything, because then you're going to get the blowback. You're going to get the blowback eventually.
Right.
So what we want to do is cultivate a civilizational appreciation among our kids for their heritage, for their language, for their way of life. And that means when they encounter someone who grew up in a classical Christian school in South Korea, they're going to understand what's going on. He's got certain affections that are different than mine, but we understand each other.
Yeah. There's the unity and diversity, and the unity is transcendent. It's eternal. not constructed. Yeah. I was thinking when you were describing it, the nihilistic right. As you see the trolls online, they're
I
just
call
as
it the dank right.
right. Yeah, that's right. Or the
The
woke
dank,
right. I've even heard that
yeah.
that term. It's the same. It's this. I like what you said. It's the same frames of reference. It's the same. Yeah, it's the same negativity and so forth. Just coming from a different vantage point. You have a new book as you're talking about keep your kids. You want to just give us a little précis of your new book?
Yeah, I've written a bunch of books on family and marriage and that sort of thing. But I recently read a great book by Abigail Schreier called Bad Therapy. Just a very good book. And as a result of thinking through it, I realized, parents today are bringing up kids in a very different world than the world that existed when I was first writing books on child rearing. Now, some of the principles are constant. Some of the principles are the same. My earlier book, Standing on the Promises, quotes a lot of scripture on the promises that God has given parents. Those don't have a sell-by date. Those are constant. But some of the challenges are brand new.
Mm-hmm.
So you're having to deal with kids growing up in a world where one of their uncles is transitioning,
Right.
or they're having to deal with the kid next door who goes to the government school and is coming home with all this rainbow stuff, right? And kids are talking about or being groomed in things that 50, 75 years ago, people didn't find out about until the second year of medical school. And now they're being pursued and groomed, and it's a gnarly world now. And to top it off, one of the aspects of this gnarly world is the therapy speak that is coming into the church even, and has affected things like child rearing. So you have the gentle parenting movement, and you need to validate little Billy's feelings, because all the cartoon shows are validating little Billy's feelings. Whatever you feel, that's the truth. Whatever you feel. Well, that is not the scriptural approach at all. So what I wanted to do is equip parents who are bringing up young children in this clown world. What is it? What is it to raise children in the circus? How can we stay faithful? How can we keep our kids faithful? How can you have 25-year-old kids who still want to come back around and have dinner with you?
Yeah. Oh, what I love about what you do, Pastor Doug, is your faith is a very public faith. I guess so much of my concern, I'm not mine alone, many people's concerns, that the privatization of the faith has really transformed Christianity into an Americanity. It's where it just kind of, it melds so comfortably with the currents of our culture, because it's literally been excommunicated, ironically, from the public square. And you, I know from day one of your ministry, you have you said, "Here I stand. You shall not pass." That is not happening here, and the results speak for themselves. You have a thoroughly civilizational public faith that's transfiguring Moscow, Idaho, and beyond, particularly through the Association of Classical Christian Schools.
Well, thank you. That mix of Luther and Gandalf sounds like a hazardous combination.
That's right. There's something to that. I could do something with that, I think. Or maybe Nate, we'll get Nate on there for his next book. Yeah. Well, but absolutely brilliant stuff. Where can people keep in touch with your work and keep up with what you're doing? We'll have links down below.
Yeah, thanks for asking. We've set up, I read a blog, and it's at Blog and Mablog, and the address is dougwills.com, all lowercase, dougwills.com. And if they go there and unpack the front page, there's a link to pretty much everything I do. All the things I've got a hand in, New St. Andrews, Canon Press, ACCS. There's a portal to all those different places from the front page of my blog.
I love it. I'm on Blog and Mablog at least once a week, gang, and you're gonna love it. I mean, and these are very meaty Very, very rich articles, and incredibly profound. And your sermons and scripture exposition. I mean, it's everything civilizational. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Pastor Doug. Thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you. Make civilization civilized again.
Amen. We often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life. And one crucial aspect of that is your routine. Staying strong physically and mentally isn't just about living longer, it's about living better. I partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. More specifically, I've been using Beam Dream for a while now, and it's completely changed the way I sleep. I'm a horrible sleeper. I used to toss and turn while my mind raced through the night. But since taking Dream Gang, I fall asleep much faster and even sleep all throughout the night. It's a game changer. Beam Dream is made with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get the deep sleep you need and deserve. It's become a nightly ritual of mine. I look forward to it each and every day. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I even wake up before my alarm sometimes, which is something I never used to do. I have the best deal I've ever had with Beam, so now's your time to give Dream a try. Shop early access to Beam's biggest sale ever, and get this, get up to 50% off site-wide for a limited time when you use promo code Turley. Yes, that's half off, gang. Don't miss out on this offer. Click the QR code on the screen or use the link below to propel your wellness journey to the next stage today.